Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our afternoon session of our spring Elevate event. I'm personally really excited about this session because I know that as an instructor, I've often felt like I wasn't always sure what was available to our students in terms of support and all of the wonderful programming that's offered for them. Even though I know I learned about it during new faculty orientation, but I think like a student on their first day of class, I only maybe retained maybe 10% of what happened during my first time. So I have invited the world's best experts here to join me today. So this is really a partnership. I've invited Dr. Jenna Hyatt, and I'm going to hope to get this whole title correct. Interim Assistant Vice Chancellor and Dean of Students, as well as Jennifer Ellsworth, the Director of Counseling and Psychological Services, and Joel Schwartzkopf, who's, now this one's the hard one for me, Joel, in charge of programming for students' health and well-being. You're going to have to correct me.
That's fine. I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Health and Wellbeing. So I oversee Cougar Health Services and University Recreation at WSU Pullman.
Thank you. And Dr. Heather Case is here as well, Assistant Dean of Students. So we've got the most important people we could have for an hour and a half. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let them get going. Thank you for being here.
Well, thanks so much for the introduction. It's really great to be in this space, and I'm just going to talk for a few minutes and turn it over to the actual experts because, as you point out, we've got some really smart people in the room, and this is a relatively small audience. So I'm hoping that means we'll get a lot of opportunity to interact with you all and answer your questions about student mental health and well-being. As was just noted, I am the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Health and Wellbeing here on the Pullman campus, which is a new position. This is an inaugural role. Which is something that came out of the pandemic, but we've seen mirrored on many other campuses. We took a look around the Pac-12 and saw that out of the other 12 institutions in that group of comparators, there were only 2 that didn't have an AVC or AVP level position dedicated to student health and well-being. Simultaneously, we've been having a lot of conversations around what did student mental health look like pre-pandemic and how is it going to look post-pandemic. And knowing that the university really needed to invest in carving out resources for that specific need of students and their success. I'm also the treasurer for the American College Health Association, and I'm on the executive committee with that group and meet bi-weekly and hear stories from our peers and colleagues across the country that sound a lot like what I hear from folks here on our campus and across our system. And I know that the challenges that this cohort of students are facing is unlike any we've seen at any other point in history. Before the pandemic, we had seen demand for mental health services outstrip enrollment nationwide, sometimes 5-fold. And even though enrollment is flattening and decreasing in some areas, we're continuing to see upward demand for mental health services. Some of this is generational, some of this is situational. But if you look at survey after survey that comes out from the American Council of Education, if you read Inside Higher Ed or the Chronicle, or any of your own trade-specific journals, you've probably seen similar stories reporting on the increased demand on the system. One that I would really call attention to if you're a data person and you just want to see the latest of those stories was the CDC report last week on adolescent substance use and mental health. And I'll drop a link to that in the chat later so you can take a look at that. But the next wave of incoming students is going to have, I think, an even higher I would say burden of care that will be placed on the system and that we need to anticipate that and plan ahead for it. Specifically in young students who identify as women, students in the LGBTQ population, students of color, rates of suicidality, depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues have just continued to skyrocket. And I don't think that that's a hyperbole when we use that word. So the reason we're here today is, as noted, to confer with the experts and talk a little bit about what resources we have on this campus and how you all as faculty can access them. I think it's really important just to honor and recognize that sometimes when you're having these discussions, it's not what you signed up for as faculty. but just the amount of time that you spend with students means that you're perceived as that frontline person for the university. And so it really means a lot to me and to my colleagues today that you came to hear a little bit about what to do when you have a student in crisis or a student has questions about their mental health. And I might circle back a little bit later so we could talk about well-being in general. But I think since the primary theme today was mental health, I'll kick it over to Dr. Jenna Hyatt, Dean of Students, to talk about her shop's role in that, and then we can really start to drill down in the weeds with the experts that we brought along with us. So over to you, Jenna.
Hi, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, perfect. So representing the Office of Dean of Students, I'm going to speak a little bit about what that encompasses for the student and as a partner with you and all of our campus community. So we see that first and foremost as a partner for care and well-being for students, and it might include working through with students complex processes that they're still learning to identify and understand to be successful, answering their questions, helping or getting connected to really a lot of different needed resources. And some of those things might be how we're helping students as in general support, crisis and emergency situations that they find themselves in, expected or unexpected, housing and food insecurity, access to support systems, campus and community involvement, navigating academic policies, processes, and where they find themselves, particularly with academic integrity issues and conduct and behavioral issues. And so I also co-chair our threat assessment team with our chief of police here at WSUPD, which allows for us to truly navigate the concerns and behaviors that individuals are noticing in students or employees, and be able to work through a particular framework to identify recommendations to address those concerns. We also have emergency funding for students. I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Heather Case, who will bring that to life for us a little bit, especially in the process to help be partner with you as you see a needs that individuals or students in your classes or the relationships that you have with students, what they're sharing with you and how you can help pass and connect that information to us so we can get true resources and students. So, but before I do, I just want to mention a few other areas within the Dean of Students office, and that is our access to disability services, students working or needing accommodations or testing falls under the Dean of Students and one of the departments, as well as our multicultural student services area in such as the Women's Center, GLBTQ+, our African American Student Center, and all of our identity-based student centers. And so really valuable, and that's just a current transition and change as of last week. So so I'm just going to start there with the pass off to you, Dr. Case, if you would bring to life some true examples of how we've worked with our faculty partners and what that experience is, not only for the faculty, but also for the students.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenna. So hopefully all of you are aware of the Student Care Network. And so that is the referral-based support that is offered to students. So any member of our community, faculty, staff, other students can refer themselves as well. And so once a referral form is filled out, that triggers a response by the Office of the Dean of Students. So I oversee the Student Care Network, and when referrals come in, I review them for assignment to a care case manager. So there are several of us. I actually work with a really incredible team. So it was sharing, Jenna, but then it went away. So so when you fill out a referral, then that is reviewed to figure out which team member would be best suited to work with the student. So the Student Care Network is right there, and then the refer a student button there that you see on the left-hand side of the screen, that will take you to the student care referral. So students can be referred to the care team for really anything, and I would much rather get 100 referrals that end up being not really anything to make sure we catch the one student that might really need lots of more ongoing support. So you can fill this out anonymously, but it is really helpful if you can fill it out with your information. So that way, if we have questions about, hey, I need a little more information. Usually that would be me contacting you. Sometimes it might be someone else on the team, just to make sure that we're getting the students paired with someone that might be a good fit and connecting them to the resources that might best address their need. So students can be referred, like Jenna said, for experiencing risk related to fundamental needs. Maybe they don't have adequate housing, adequate access to food, and all the way to like they haven't been in class for 2 weeks. I haven't seen them. I don't know what's going on with them, right? So as you fill this out, you can add as many students as are involved. And then if there are specific questions, I will be completely honest, we're not going to be able to give you tons of information about what we are doing with the students because that's part of their FERPA file, their information, but we will send an email saying, thank you for referring the student. I've connected with them and offered resources. Another important thing about the Student Care Network is it is voluntary. So we can reach out and reach out and reach out, but if students choose not to engage with us, we're not going to be like, you have to come to our office and meet with us, right? It's their choice. It is included in their student fees. They don't have to pay anything, but asking for help sometimes can be really frightening and kind of overwhelming. So if I can, Jen, is it possible? Well, actually, yeah, I'm going to share my screen. There's two really key things about this process that I'd like to share. And Jenna was kind of sharing it, and then I didn't talk about it when she was sharing it. So let me share this. First of all, we are seeing a significant increase in the number of referrals. We have more referrals to date than any other academic year for the whole year combined, and we're not even done with the spring semester. So we have started to try and use some common language with students and with other departments that we interact with, because everything we were getting in the fall was, I'm in crisis, I'm in crisis. And then they would go on to describe what was happening. And while it might have been very uncomfortable and very stressful, a lot of the things that they were describing really didn't hit the criteria for crisis. So on the form, there's a little quick 1-sentence description, but it's based on this more extensive description. So students might need support dealing with stress. So stress happens. It's kind of, regular life events, but maybe they happen really close together. And so it's starting to impact the student's ability to cope in a way that's helpful and healthy. Distress would be multiple stressful events have happened, one right after the other usually. And this is when the student starts to appear like they don't have the coping skills they need to adequately address the challenges they're facing. So that starts to be a pretty big deficit. Crisis is usually really unexpected, and it impacts the student to the degree that they are not able to maintain or complete daily tasks. They might not be showering, they might not be eating, they might not be interacting with their friends in the way that they used to, or with their faculty members the way they used to. So that is what the referral is based on, so that students can also start to realize, okay, this one thing went wrong and I'm really struggling with it, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'm in crisis, but I do need some support. So with that in mind, the other thing that I would like to share with you is some recent trends. And this is through the beginning of this month, I think through February 7th. So when we look at the referrals that we've received this year, over 400 students have come to us reporting a personal tragedy. Close to 300 have come to us with mental health concerns. And academic concerns, while this looks like it's the third highest referral, we tend to see that academic concerns are more a symptom of a bigger problem. So the first thing that might start to show up is they start disengaging from class, not coming to class regularly, not turning in assignments, maybe the quality of their work significantly decreases, and faculty are referring saying, I don't know what's going on with the student, but something's really changed and they're just not coming to class. So that's why the referral may come in as academic concern, but as we start to peel back those layers, we start to realize there's been a crisis event that's happened at home. There's been something traumatic that's happened to the student on campus. It could be lots of different things. They lost their job and now they can't afford their rent and now they don't know where they're going to live. And so they've been out, trying to find jobs instead of going to class. So this is, like I said, to date as of about 2 weeks ago. So we've received over 1,300 referrals so far this year. And so students may come in and actually tick more than one box. So it's not like they only have personal tragedy or they only have interpersonal conflict. I will say we work with HRL a lot, and the number of interpersonal conflicts this year, we're all just kind of dazed and confused a little bit by how many interpersonal conflicts we are experiencing. So yeah, sorry. Thank you, Jennifer, for answering those. This data is representative of in the case management office on Pullman's campus. We manage Pullman, Global, and Everett. But I would say predominantly almost all of those are WSU campus. So those numbers are pretty reflective of just WSU. Can
I add a few things there? We'll piggyback this a tad. One of the ways that you may hear from our office is through an email that we send to you in relation to a student who is in the midst of support or crisis distress that is interrupting their life significantly, that therefore may impact or interrupt their pursuit within the courses that they're enrolled in at that time. And so you would receive, we don't send these out very often, and we never will be able to share exactly what is happening. But when we do, and our experience working with faculty has been very, very helpful and supportive in working with the student in terms of whatever accommodation needs they might have. But that is one way you may hear from our office more directly. In that message, absolutely, if you are able and willing to connect with us over the phone, or respond to the email with any other questions, we will work with you. There are just some limitations with what we can share with you, but like I said, we don't do it very often. I also am the main point of contact for all of WSU in relation to a death of a student. And so there may be times where I'm working with the dean and associate deans and chairs in any of those classes that particular student may be enrolled in. And we come in as an office and support and offer to you as a faculty member, if you'd like for us to come in to your space or your classroom. I know that's an extreme example, but unfortunately it does happen. And so just to know, we truly are a partner. Dr. Jennifer Ellsworth is one of those many partners who we hold hands going through that experience together and support and care and well-being again of all of our students and for the experience that you've created in your classroom. So how we can all right. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Dr. Ellsworth, if that's helpful, and we'll keep tying these strings together. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Erica, I appreciate the invitation to come speak with everyone this afternoon. It is always so fun to get to work with faculty colleagues. I see some familiar faces, which is great. And I know that there are a lot of people in this room who really care deeply about student well-being and student mental health. I know there's also a lot of expertise in the room. My eye keeps getting drawn down to Casey Hildenbrand's profile photo, and she has been an incredible resource for us. She's served on so many of our search committees as we look for new mental health professionals. So I know that many of you are really familiar with the work that happens on campus to support mental health. Before I jump in and start sharing slides, I would appreciate it so much if you're able and willing to maybe share a brief introduction in the chat. I'm interested, I can see everybody's names, but I'm interested, what's your discipline and what campus are you joining us from? I'm on the WSU Pullman campus. I know things can get pretty WSU Pullman centric, but one of my goals for this presentation is to share resources that are going to apply broadly across the system and to speak a little bit to resources on each of your individual campuses. Oh, this is awesome. Okay, I can already see we've got some pretty good representation coming in from across the system. This is great. Thank you so much. All right, I am going to share my screen. I think I'm probably not as savvy at lecturing and monitoring the chat and having PowerPoint slides as some of you might be in your roles, but I'm going to do my best. And if you have a question, I'm really open to answering questions throughout the presentation. If I seem to not be noticing you, feel free to sort of flag that you have a question, and we'll also have time for questions at the end. Oh, this is wonderful. I can see as responses come in, we've got representation, I think, from every campus, but also our research extension centers, which is phenomenal. I'm really glad to see it. Okay, I'm going to pull up the presentation and we will start sharing the screen. Okay. All right, so we're going to be talking about supporting student mental health and campus mental health resources. And I think that the conversations we've been having are going to dovetail really nicely. I'm appreciative that we've been able to hear from the Office of the Dean of Students, and especially to hear about the Student Care Network referral process. I'll be referring to some of that over the course of the presentation that I have for us. And just by way of introduction, again, my name is Dr. Jennifer Ellsworth. I'm a licensed psychologist. I'm the Director of Counseling and Psychological Services here on the WSU Pullman campus. So here's an overview of what I hope to cover during the time that I have with you today. I want to speak a little bit to student mental health. It'll connect really nicely with what some of what I lost my words. Some of what Joel has already shared with us, our executive director and AVP over well-being. Then we'll talk about the role of faculty and instructors, and we'll get specific about how you can help support students in distress. So we'll talk about WSU mental health resources. Then I want to highlight some additional training and education resources that are available to you all as faculty, instructors, and staff. Time permitting, I have a couple of scenarios, and I love a good scenario, and I think it's a really rich opportunity to hear from colleagues and to maybe come up with some ideas and hear some things that we wouldn't necessarily think of individually. So I'm looking forward to that. And then we'll end with time for questions and discussion. So I think this article in the Chronicle of Higher Education really caught my eye in August. I report to Joel, he's my boss, so I remember printing this out and bringing a copy of it to talk about with him in one of our one-to-ones. So during the fall, this article came out and summarized a fireside chat that the Surgeon General of the United States had about college student mental health. One of the highlights was that mental health is now one of the top reasons that many college students are considering dropping out of college. So this has been in the forefront of my mind over the course of this academic year as I think about the general state of student mental health. And then as Joel mentioned, we have the recent CDC report on teen mental health. Many of you may have seen different articles or different reporting on this report. I think one of the really striking statistics from this, in my mind, was seeing that 60% of adolescent young women are reporting feelings of hopelessness or depression. It's a really significant number. So I have a couple of slides. I just want to speak to a couple of specific data points. I think probably we're all having a shared experience of seeing that student mental health is worsening and that the needs are increasing. So I don't want to belabor the point, but I want to share a couple of statistics. So as mentioned, mental health is one of the top reasons that college students are considering withdrawing from school. During the 2020 to 2021 academic year, more than 60% of students reported experiencing at least one mental health problem, according to a National Healthy Mind study. And of course, the 2020 to 2021 academic year was right in the heart of the pandemic. So in some ways, it's no surprise that the numbers were so significant, but I think we're continuing to see a lot of mental health impact, even as we move a little bit past the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the 2021 National College Health Assessment Survey, almost 3/4 of students reported moderate or severe psychological distress. And so these first 3 bullet points are really focused on college student mental health. But again, with this recent CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey, we can see that adolescent mental health is also significantly worsening. And those are the adolescents who are in high school today are going to be the college students who are on our campus next year, the year after, the year after. I think this is a good time to revisit Joel's point about national trends in mental health and to speak a little bit to how we've seen that play out at WSU. The Center for Collegiate Mental Health is the organization that really is a leader in college student mental health and does a lot of research and collects a lot of data about college student mental health from university counseling centers. A really, I think, noteworthy statistic is that between 2009 and 2015, they found that university counseling center utilization, so the degree to which students were coming into their university counseling centers nationwide, increased by an average of 30 to 40%. And that was at a time when enrollment was only increasing by about 5%. I'm anticipating that none of you will be shocked to learn that counseling center resources and staffing did not commensurately increase by 30 or 40% during that same time frame. So the demands, the utilization really increased significantly at a time when resources were fairly static and enrollment was only increasing by about 5%. So this next number is from WSU Pullman only, from our counseling center here, but during a similar time frame, we noticed an almost 60% increase in students attending walk-in appointments. And I can 100% vouch for nobody gave us 60% more counselors to help address all of those concerns. So I think the position that really puts us in here at WSU across the system, but also for colleagues nationally, is that we find it's not just a counseling center sort of issue. It's not that the students who are struggling make their way to the counseling center or to the office of the dean of students and get all their needs met. I think what we're finding is that the needs come up all over campus. And for faculty, instructors, we know that for many students, you're their main point of contact with the university. So when I think about the number of students a counselor here at the counseling center is impacting or working with during any given semester, you could have a large lecture class with more students in that one lecture class than a counselor has on their caseload over the course of the semester. So you're a touch point for so many students in a way that some of our other offices are not able to be. So I think it's that much more critical that you all have an opportunity to think about and learn some resources for how you might support students in distress. As I was reading different articles and preparing to talk with you all this afternoon, I really liked this quote from Kevin Schollenberger, who's the Vice Provost for Student Health and Wellbeing at Johns Hopkins University. And he said, quote, "Faculty aren't expected to be counselors just to show a sense of care, that they notice something might be going on and to know where to refer students." And I think that's excellent advice. I don't think it's reasonable for anyone to expect you to serve any sort of ongoing counseling role for students, but it can be really powerful for a student for you to notice that there's something going on. Or when they come to, maybe you don't have to notice, maybe they're bringing it right to your door during office hours or right to your inbox via email. Just to have an experience of feeling cared for and that you're going to help route them to the right resources can be really meaningful and really powerful. So your response really can be as simple as reaching out and asking if everything is okay. I do want to give you some other things though, beyond reaching out and asking if everything's okay. So we're going to talk about some specifics. A resource that I think is really valuable is WSU's Guide to Helping Students in Distress. Those guides are campus specific and they're available online. This is where I wish I had more tech savviness. Maybe one of my co-presenters can help get that into the chat. The Guide to Helping Students in Distress covers several areas. So it's going to provide some general response guidelines. It's going to talk about the campus and community resources specific to your campus. And specifically, it'll walk you through a process of recognizing, responding, and referring to students who are in distress. And we're going to talk through that in the presentation, as well as having the information available through the website. So the first thing really is to respond with compassion. That's just expressing that care, asking that student if they're okay. And there are a few specific suggestions that I can make to have in mind as you think about making a response with compassion. So the first is going to be to listen thoughtfully. So listen with care, listen with sensitivity. This is a place to ask students how they're doing. You might ask a student if they're having thoughts of hurting themselves. It's going to be important to trust your gut. So if you're worried about a student, pay attention to that. And there are several different resources you can use if you're worried about a student. You can reach out to them and we'll talk about how. You could also reach out to a colleague. You could reach out to a department chair, or you could decide, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and submit a student care network referral. I don't need to overthink this. My sense is something's wrong. I'm going to submit a student care network referral. On our campus, we're really lucky to have a lot of different campus resources. All of the campuses have some degree of mental health resource available, and we'll talk a little bit about what those specific resources are. So you might encourage a student, if you're on a campus that has a physical counseling center with therapists available, you might say, I've got really great colleagues in the counseling center. I really encourage you to go talk with them. I think for anyone in the room, really a student care network referral is going to be a fantastic way to help connect a student with campus resources, because you'll submit that referral and what the student will receive on their end is a communication in writing outlining some of the specific resources that are available. I can't emphasize this point enough. I probably should have broken it out from the list, but it's important to take care of yourself as you're responding with compassion. So the degree to which you'll be offering support really varies. And I've talked with faculty over the years who are doing things as simple as saying, hey, can I walk you down to the counseling center? And it's sort of a one-time interaction, to faculty who have built really close relationships with a graduate student, for example, and have invited that graduate student to their family Thanksgiving because it's an international student who wouldn't be able to get home otherwise, and are checking in really regularly. But I think regardless of how involved the care is, it's important to pay attention to your own sort of internal resources, your own capacity to offer that care, and to make sure that you're thinking about your own well-being and checking in and getting consultation or seeking support if you need it. Another aspect that's important to consider is safety is number one. So if you're in a situation where you're not sure and it feels like this student might really be at imminent, immediate risk to themselves, where I'm worried about their potential to harm someone else, call 911. Definitely prioritize safety. And then, as we've been talking about, share what you know. The Student Care Network referral is really excellent, and it directs information to a small group of professionals who are equipped to really support a student and to help coordinate some care. I think one of the strengths of the student care network is that it can really leverage existing relationships. So if you're concerned about a student and you submit the student care network referral, those care case managers are going to be able to see, oh, this is a student who lives in residence life. Maybe I can connect with a housing and residence life colleague and see if maybe an RED or an RA can check in with them. Or, you know what, I know the advisor for that student's major and they do a phenomenal job of supporting students. Let me check in with that advisor and see if they've got a relationship and might be able to offer some additional care. The information also comes to the counseling center, which is a fantastic resource. So if a student is already working with the counselor and you've got some additional information, we can route that to the counselor, which can be super helpful. I was talking with a student affairs colleague a couple of weeks ago who said, I was talking with a student, I'm really concerned about them. They say they're already talking with a counselor, but they specifically said they're not disclosing that they're thinking about suicide. Well, holy smokes, we would absolutely want to have that information. And if it's a student who hasn't yet come to the counseling center, we have that information available so that when they come in, we have some additional context for the concerns that they're experiencing. And then the last part of responding with compassion is to potentially follow up with the student later to see how they're doing. I think that really communicates that sense of care and concern. All right, so now we'll get into those 3 R's, the specifics for helping students in distress. And I think my colleagues have been speaking to some of these. I think Heather in particular spoke to some of the ways that you might recognize that a student is in distress. I'm tempted to bring up that website. You know what? I'm going to bring it up. This feels a little radical. Am I going to be able to? Ta-da! Here it is. So you can see here that we've got the faculty and staff resources, the recognize, respond, refer, and report. You can see that there's information for the campuses across the system. I'm going to not do Pullman because I spend a lot of time thinking about Pullman. Let's go to the Tri-Cities campus. So you're going to have information here about resources that are specific to the Tri-Cities campus, community resources that are specific to the Tri-Cities. And then you've got information below about the referring and reporting aspect of the process. So you can look through this menu and see there's a list that outlines a number of different potential concerns. So maybe the concern is, I'm not sure what, but something is wrong. And then you're going to click it and get some information about referring and reporting. For a family or personal tragedy, loss, or crisis, here's some examples: sudden or long-term illness, depression, or anxiety. You've got some information to refer and report. So here, that's a little bit of information about how that website works. And then I'm going to get back into my presentation. Okay, so some of the sort of constant things that I'd suggest keeping an eye out for is a drop in attendance, a lot of missing assignments, a change in appearance or hygiene, or unusual erratic behavior. And there can be others, but I think those are some of the core that if you notice any of those things happening for a student, you may be recognizing that this is a student who's in distress. I think a good general practice for response, and you may want to tailor it a little bit depending on the circumstances and what the student's situation is, but expressing concern and care is going to be constant across different concerns. And it can also be helpful to give an example of a time that the student's behavior was worrying to you. So you may approach a student to say, hey, I wanted to check in with you. I really care about how you're doing. I've noticed that you haven't been attending class consistently for the last several weeks, and that's unlike you. You were attending regularly through the first part of the semester. I just wanted to check in and see if everything's okay. And then for that last R, that's going to be a referral. Counseling services can be a great referral. I think particularly Sometimes you're working with students who are really comfortable with you and they're going to disclose a lot of information and really be looking to you for mentoring and wisdom. And I think that it's always helpful to know, sort of to know when to say, like, I care about you a lot and I'm happy to listen and support you, but this goes beyond my expertise. I'm really going to recommend that you talk to one of our mental health professionals that we have available. So I recommend that you reach out to the Counseling Center for some additional support. The Office of the Dean of Students is another great resource. Dr. Hyatt and Dr. Case are key representatives from the Office of the Dean of Students. So there's the Student Care Network referral, which is a really important resource and process. Sometimes, though, I know for myself, I'll just refer a student directly to the Office of the Dean of Students. I'll suggest, I think you should make an appointment with the Office of the Dean of Students. And the way that I think about their office is, if you need help and you're not exactly sure what you need, the Office of the Dean of Students is going to be the office that helps a student sort that out and helps connect them with the appropriate resources. And then, of course, Student Care Network referral is a fantastic way to refer a student for additional support and resources. And more times than not, I think that's something that should be part of a response to a student who's struggling with mental health and needing some additional support. All right, so we have put up a few different websites. This is another one that I think is really helpful, and maybe someone can help me out and get this studentcare.wsu.edu into the chat. I think that this really highlights the variety of mental health resources that are available across the WSU system. So you can see for the Pullman campus that there's a link to counseling and psychological services, which is our counseling center here at WSU Pullman. Our colleagues in Vancouver also have a counseling office. They hire psychologists and have a training program, and students on the Vancouver campus can access some counseling as well. I have a colleague in Tri-Cities, so there's counseling available in person at Tri-Cities. There's a counseling center in Spokane. So for many of our campuses, there's a counseling center. My understanding is that Everett contracts their counseling out. So there would be information available on campus about how to make that referral. And then for our global campus, primarily what we're able to offer is crisis support. So it is really exciting. It's a new thing this year that all WSU students have access to crisis support. And you can see that that's included in the list for all of those campuses. So there's a variety of different services and resources that are available. I know for our research extensions, the question comes up really regularly, like, what are the mental health resources available out in Prosser or out sort of in this small out of the way area? Every student on campus has access to crisis resources. And as I understand it, I could be wrong. Many of our research extension students are enrolled on the Pullman campus, and we have telehealth service availability through the Counseling Center. So I am hard pressed to think of very many silver linings from the COVID-19 pandemic, but offering telehealth mental health services would be a silver lining. We didn't have that service available prior to the pandemic, and it's something that we continue to offer now. So there's expanded access to resources for students across the system. I also wanted to share a brief additional note about responding to concerns about suicide, because I think that's the most anxiety provoking for all of us. It's one thing to help a student who says, I had a really difficult breakup and I'm heartbroken and I just cannot get myself to get out of bed. We can probably all give a student a pep talk or point them in the right direction for that. Or if a student says, I've always struggled with anxiety and my anxiety is just sort of ratcheting up. Okay, we can help point a student in the right direction for that. I think though that suicide feels really anxiety provoking and sort of scary for most of us to consider trying to help us support a student through. So I just want to share this really sort of simple approach. It's not complicated. It shouldn't be complicated. I want it to be something that you can remember in the moment. So if you can just remember SAS, you're going to share ask, and support. So if you're talking with a student and there's concern about suicide, that's a great time to share your concern, to let them know I'm really worried about you. I really care about how you're doing. And then to invite that person to share a little bit more about their situation with you. In terms of asking, it can be really important to ask the person if they're considering suicide. And I know that can feel uncomfortable and like, should I be doing that? I think it's important to know that if somebody's thinking about suicide, they're already thinking about suicide. And you asking the question is not going to, it's not going to inception or like plant the idea in their mind. It's just going to give them a way to talk about it. And if you're talking with a person and they say, yes, I am thinking about suicide, that is important for you to know. That's really good information. That's going to help you connect that student with some ongoing resources and care. So at that point, you're going to offer support. You're going to support by helping them get in contact with resources. So depending on your campus, and I'd encourage all of you to go to the websites and find out a little bit about the specific resources on your campus. That might mean some of the campuses have a 24/7 crisis phone number, where if you call that number, a crisis counselor is going to answer the phone. That's the case for Global, for example, and also for Everett. So you could say, well, let's just call the crisis counselor together right now. If you're on a campus that has a counseling center like the Pullman campus, you might say, let's get you a crisis appointment. Can we on speakerphone together call over to the counseling center so that you can schedule a crisis appointment? And then again, staying in touch if it's appropriate can be a really, I think, meaningful way for students to really feel your support and concern. All right, so I'm going to shift gears and we're going to talk about a couple more student mental health resources. New this year are resources that are available anytime, anywhere, and for all students. So these are the mobile mental health resources. And I want to talk a little bit about them. I think that they're a really valuable resource. They can really help a wide range of students. So you can see in the bullet points from the snip of the website, it could be beneficial for students who just proactively want to maintain their mental health. It could be helpful for a student who's sort of on the fence. They're not sure if they want to come to the counseling center or like really need a professional, but they're interested in supporting their mental health a little bit more. It could be someone who, maybe you're talking to someone who says, I went to the counseling center and I had a first appointment and now I'm on a wait list. This could be a resource that if it's at the Pullman Counseling Center, they likely already would have been encouraged to use these, but you can help amplify and support that message. Or it could be somebody who maybe had a history of mental health treatment in high school and they're just wanting to sort of kind of keep paying attention to it. They just need that occasional reminder. So there are several different resources. The two that I want to highlight are WellTrack Boost. And WellTrack Boost is app-based. And when students go in, they're going to be able to choose from a number of different concerns. And it really highlights the most common concerns. So there's going to be a course on anxiety. There's going to be a course on depression. There's going to be a course on sleep. And it's designed and tailored to be appealing to students. So the elements of the course are really sort of brief. I don't know if I can really say TikTok style because I'm not on TikTok. I'm too old for that. But they're brief. They're like 90-second sort of videos on different topics under the heading of depression or anxiety. It's based on CBT, on cognitive behavioral therapy. And for the depression and anxiety in particular, it really outlines a lot of skills that are similar to what they would get in their first few sessions of therapy. So it's something that they can start on proactively without necessarily needing to be in sessions with a therapist, which again can be really helpful for someone who's not sure they want to work with a therapist, or somebody who is saying, you know, I've been in, but I'm on a wait list. I really need to get working on something sooner. So if a student had come into the counseling center at WSU Pullman, had that initial appointment, we're not at a wait list yet, but it happens every semester. If they were on a wait list, working through some courses in WellTrack would position them really well to use therapy very effectively once they were able to get them. The next resource I want to highlight is called Together All, and Together All is online anonymous peer support. Peer support can be really meaningful for students. And the thing that I personally love about Together All is that it's moderated by clinicians. So that gives me a lot of peace of mind to know that students have access to the support with each other, but also that if a clinician is monitoring the messaging and can see like, oh, there's a real concern about suicide, for example, this person needs some escalated sort of more individualized care, the Together All space allows for that. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about some more training and education opportunities for faculty, instructors, and staff. And then we'll shift into scenarios. So health promotion on the WSU Pullman campus has done a phenomenal job of creating some trainings that are available to faculty, staff, and instructors across the system. Health promotion has been part of Cougar Health Services. When we were all here together, we worked closely with our colleagues in health promotion. They've moved over to the Office of the Dean of Students, and it's important to me to keep those connections up. So this information is from the health promotion website through the Office of the Dean of Students. So there are two key courses that can be really helpful for faculty, instructors, and staff who are wanting to learn more about how to support students and how to support their mental health. So Campus Connect is a 2-hour suicide prevention training program. It's offered free of charge for all WSU students, faculty, and staff on any campus at any location. Some of what they cover are background information and statistics about college student suicide. And then they train you on how to ask if someone's feeling suicidal, how to effectively make appropriate referrals, and how to really build your skills for active listening, communicating well, and building a relationship. So that's a phenomenal resource if you are interested and would like to do some more. If you are really, really interested, want to do a lot more, there's also mental health first aid training. So this is more involved, it's longer. There's a 2-hour pre-work session followed by a 6-hour training. There is a cost for faculty and staff. It's $50, but it's available across the system at any campus location. And you'll learn in much more detail information about symptoms, crisis response, and active listening skills that go beyond just working with students who are thinking about suicide, to cover areas like depression and anxiety, trauma, psychosis, eating disorders, and substance abuse. And again, there's no expectation on anyone's part that you would emerge from this training and serve as a counselor to students, but it's going to give you the more in-depth skills and ability to help a student who's really struggling. I think about it, I think the first aid component is really apt. So for example, in our office, we're part of Cougar Health Services. We have training in CPR. We go through that training. We're not healthcare providers, but we're able to intervene in a crisis and to have more skill. All right, are we ready for a scenario? I'm going to read the scenario and then I'm going to stop screen sharing so we can talk this through. So the scenario is, you notice that a student in your class, Morgan, who had been performing well for the first part of the semester, had a significant decline in their work on a midterm exam. They then missed class several times over the next 2 weeks, which was a contrast with their regular attendance up to that point. So what options might you consider for following up with Morgan? And I really would love to hear from all of you who have probably navigated some variation on this scenario a number of times. Oh, and I'm going to make us like really be applied learners. You can put things into the chat, if that works better for you. I know often we have to be mindful about our Wi-Fi if you're working from home, and today is President's Day. If you have kids in the Pullman school system, your kids are home and you're trying to navigate a lot of things. So if you can't join and speak, I'm interested to see things over chat. Can I post the case one more time? Yes, I can.
I would either make a phone call or email the student and say, is everything okay?
Wonderful. So reaching out directly to the student by email or by phone. And I can see in the chat, so I just posted the scenario in the chat. I can see a comment about sending an email, expressing what you've noticed and asking if everything's okay. Yes, part of what I really like about that response is sharing an example of what has you worried and what has you concerned. I don't know how to address any of you, professor, doctor. Lisa feels informal, but Lisa, take it away.
Hi, Lisa's great. I'm not a doctor. I just feel for this scenario and maybe wanted to ask a question that I feel like a lot of times I would send an email, but then the student then comes to class feeling like they're kind of in trouble and wants to talk to me before or after class about this, when like I don't really want to talk about personal things at that time with them. But then if I try to push it off, I feel like they might drop off again and not come by. And so just that I feel like sometimes the next step is hard too.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I have thoughts, but I also, this is such a great place for some collective wisdom. And I know that many of you have been navigating these scenarios for a long time. Do people have thoughts? How do you navigate kind of that expression of concern with like, but what are the next steps? Christine.
I find that the students, a lot of when I email them and say, I noticed that I missed you in class today, or I missed you in class the last couple of days, they're surprised that I noticed. Like, she noticed that I wasn't there. And so I wonder if it's what Lisa said. They think that they're in trouble because they weren't there. And so I try to follow that up by, you know, you're not in trouble. I just am concerned. I want to know that you're okay and if there's anything I can do. And a lot of times they'll just say, you know, I overslept or I whatever. Okay, great. Let me know if I can help you catch up or if you got somebody to do that. Other times I get responses like, I had something really awful happen, blah, blah, blah. And then I agree with Lisa. Then you're like, if you're doing that in person right before you start class, that's oh my gosh, what do I do with this right in the moment? And the response, I mean, I had someone disclose that she was sexually assaulted. So my response was, I really want to talk with you about this. And I want to make sure that you're okay and get you the support that you need. We start class in 10 minutes and I'm not sure that is we have enough time for that. Are you okay to stay after? If not, I'm going to call somebody to come to class and talk to you while I teach. Or I actually, in that particular situation, said to the other class of students, I'm really, really sorry. I have to start 10 minutes late so that I could walk this person somewhere. And, you know, if you apologize and are open, the students are usually okay with that. They know we're human, we're not perfect.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing that experience. I think that's a really great example that we can all learn from. I think that's about as significant a disclosure as you could be getting right before class. And I think your response really, really highlights your expression of care. I think it demonstrates a lot of flexibility. Like, do I call and have someone come talk to her? Is she okay to sit through class and then we talk? Do I tell the class it's going to be 10 minutes and walk her somewhere? So I love that you're highlighting different options. And then I think another really important point of what your example highlights is, in no way did you step into feeling responsible to help sort of address that or navigate that. You really facilitated a connection to the right campus professionals. When you said walk in, what campus are you on, Christine?
I'm on the Spokane campus. I'm relatively new to WSU. This happened when I was teaching at a college in Seattle area, Shoreline Community College in Seattle area. And I'm a nursing instructor. I also have been a forensic nurse examiner, which I think is probably why she felt
I was
okay
gonna
to disclose to me, because she knew I had experience in that. But by the same token, just because I have experience in that does not mean that I can take that on when I'm doing all of this other stuff. Wasn't my role, even though I had experience in that. So I just wanted to let this person know that it was significant. I did care, and I wanted to connect with them with help.
It's a really wonderful example. And now that you've shared your experience, I'm like, no wonder you did such a beautiful job supporting that student. You had relevant experience to draw from. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's see. I think I must have accidentally posted blankness in the chat. I am sorry about that. And I can see Alex's follow-up question. I apologize. I must have hit an errant key on my keyboard. Let me just put this scenario into the chat. I think this has been some good dialogue about this scenario, and I want to put up another one. So I'm going to just put this one in the chat. And I'll make sure, yes, that's what I want to submit. So for this scenario, let's talk through a second one. David, a student in one of your introductory courses, emailed you to apologize for missing an in-class quiz. He explained that he's been struggling with his mental health and isn't, quote, sure he wants to be here anymore, close quote, after a recent difficult breakup. He said that he's planning to be in class tomorrow and asked about options to make up the quiz. What options might you consider for following up, David? Have you encountered emails like this? I'm guessing
Yes.
29 people. Okay, so I'm getting a yes from Christine. I saw a hand up from Erica. I'm guessing that many of you have encountered this type of email. I'm seeing a thumbs up from Casey and Caitlin. What sort of options might you consider? And again, you're welcome to unmute and share them, or type into the chat. So Christine, I love it. Yes, ask the suicide question. Jamie, yes, and other faculty ask you for advice. I bet they do. Say a little bit more about asking the suicide question. What sort of thoughts are you having as you read?
Well, David said to me, I'm not sure I want to be here anymore after a difficult breakup. So I would say, David, tell me what you mean by that comment.
That is,
Are you feeling suicidal?
excellent.
If I'm feeling suicidal, do you have a plan? Right.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. When I read that scenario, I'm not sure whether David means I don't want to be at WSU anymore because I came from my partner who I just broke up with, or whether David means I don't want to be alive anymore. So asking that specific question would really help know how urgent a concern this is. I think another aspect of, so this one's an email, and if we imagine that the first one was also an email exchange, I think something to have in mind is that we can express concern and also point students toward resources in the same email. So absolutely, you could respond and say, David, I'm really worried about you. When you say you're not sure you want to be here anymore, that makes me wonder if you're thinking about suicide. I'm happy to be a resource. I'm happy to be a support. I also want to tell you about a couple of really important resources that are available to you. And then give the crisis phone number for your campus. You can point towards a counseling center or mental health professional. And you can also say, I'm pretty worried. And so I'm going to reach out to the Student Care Network referral process and ask them to follow up with you. So I can see a question from Alex. So in this example, won't asking the suicide question bias the student in that direction? and shares, I default to no WSU until more evidence accumulates. So in my experience, and I think the best practice that's emerging is that asking the question is not going to bias the student in that direction. So I know that that can be a fear, like, am I going to sort of introduce the idea of suicide for someone who wasn't already thinking about that? And I have not found that to be the case. I think that students will be really quick to say, oh my gosh, no, I want to go home. I'm from the West Side. WSU is not for me. But if they are thinking about suicide, then you're going to be able to help connect them with resources. Karen.
I guess part of my reaction to that scenario too is that email feels like too much distance between me and the student, and I would almost want to try to get their phone number, ask if I could call, and make some kind of connection and just make sure that they're receiving the communication.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I think that's really wonderful. I'm not sure if I heard an echo that was my own voice or if someone else was trying to weigh in. I think one strategy that I use, because my whole world is student mental health, and often there's a component of trying to connect or reach out to a student. And Jenna and Heather, you may have some wisdom to share on this as well. But sometimes I'll reach out to let a student know that I'm trying to connect with them. And I guess I have the advantage of having their phone numbers through the EMR. The electronic medical record has registration information. But I think I can let students know, like, hey, I'm trying to connect with you. And in the meantime, I want to be sure you have this information about resources. So providing the information while also trying to make that direct connection. Oh, there's lots of rich discussion happening in the chat. Okay, I can see Casey's, I'm just going to read these out loud. This is really good. So Casey shares, honestly, this is really hard. Showing compassion, connecting students to resources, but also upholding expectations for class. So now I'm put in a position to make a judgment on what to do about the question of making up missed work. I hate those situations. And I can see a heart and a thumbs up, and I'm imagining that many of you are relating to that. It's a really difficult line that you're asked to walk, and we're speaking so much to the mental health support side of things, but I know as instructors, you're also in the sort of classroom expectations, what's in the syllabus, where do I say, yes, you can make up a quiz, and where do I say you'll need to work with the Access Center for accommodations. It's a really difficult balance to strike.
And I keep thinking, I totally agree with you, Casey. And I keep thinking in my syllabus, I'm trying to write more things like case by case basis instead of black and white, hard and fast rules about makeup. Because that gives me a little bit of freedom in these really hard situations.
Yeah, thank you, Christine.
I was just going to add that this is what makes my mental health suffer.
This is demanding, and also hardly anyone in this room went to graduate school to learn about mental health, right? I mean, I think Heather and I did. I don't know about anybody else. Like you're an expert in your discipline. You're an expert in your discipline, and so this is really asking a lot for you to be able to offer this kind of support and compassion. Aisha.
So I'm from College of Pharmacy, and we have like student advisors. I am a little bit hesitant in like asking students about personal questions. I feel more confident in helping them with class material or quiz or anything. I can even go like out of the way to make sure that they are not missing something and they complete, because we have they need like competency to pass my course. So if they are missing classes, or if they suddenly I see a decline, and I know that this is a good student, but somehow I see that student decline because of some personal thing that is going on, I feel confident that I can take care of him as far as anything related to coursework is concerned, or I could extend my helping hand, or I could help him in any way. But as far as like taking care of personal thing, I feel very nervous, and I would recommend him to advisor, because we have advisors for these students who guide them through the coursework and anything. So I'm saying this because a few years back, I had a student, and she was doing extremely well, but because due to COVID, that year we had to, the campus closed, and we couldn't run the classes, and these were like lab course that I'm talking about. So I was in constant touch with all the students, and slowly and surely I saw that I was not hearing anything back from her. Like I was trying to reach out to her, but unfortunately there was no response. So I was a bit concerned. So although like the time passed, she was supposed to be coming back next semester, but next semester she was not there. Next semester she was not there, and she was always like in my mind, like, and I was trying to find from her directly, like trying to email her, and I was not getting response, and I was more and more concerned. So, and the problem with our staff was like, we were seeing some change, like some of the staff which was there, they were not there anymore, they moved out, and the new staff was there. So that was the thing. And then when I couldn't hear back from her, then I was like really concerned, because in my mind 1 year has already passed by. So I reached out to her, and I CC'd the student services, and I was like, what's happening? So something which I consider it as personal sometimes, because from this experience I learned student was not reaching out to me, but she was having conversation with student services, which I was not aware about. Something which I feel like, I don't know, I'm very hesitant in approaching students outside like coursework is concerned, like about their personal life or something like that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that experience and the reflections on what it's like to try to really focus on the academic support and not feeling as comfortable or like you're the right person to offer that personal support. I think that really connects with Caitlin's comment in the chat that I'll read. I like to distinguish between the academic support, which I can provide in our class, and personal support, which other WSU resources can provide for well-being. In emails from students, I always guide them first to personal support services on campus, but then follow up with the academic support that I can provide in our class while they navigate this challenging situation. Caitlin, thank you. That's wonderful. I think that's a great example of really helping to effectively refer students to the resources on campus that are going to best meet their needs. I want to share a quick resource with folks. The website is called Seize the Awkward, and it sort of, I think, connects with some of what we're talking about, which is like, do I ask if they're thinking about suicide? That doesn't feel like my place to ask if they're thinking about suicide. Do I ask about how they're doing personally? I'm not so sure about this. So I like the campaign, and it's sponsored by some of our gold standards in the field. So if you're familiar with the Jed Foundation, they do so much work to support collegiate mental health and to engage in campus suicide prevention. Another one of the sponsors of this campaign is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So again, if it feels like Jennifer, you can say that, and I'm never ever going to do it, but you have some interest in like, okay, but fine, but how might I ask a question if I was really worried about a student? That may be an additional resource. And I really want to highlight, I think it's critical that you not step into any sort of personal support space or counselor sort of space. I think the purpose of asking questions about, I'm worried, how are you doing, I'm worried, when you say you don't want to be here, are you thinking about suicide? The entire intent of asking those questions is to then effectively refer them over to a personal resource. That's really, really important. I am seeing some excellent conversations in the chat. And I think this is probably a good wrapping up point for my portion of the presentation. Erica is thinking about course design and how it supports mental health. It's really critical. Oh, this is wonderful. I'll check in. Karen, did you have a question for me or a more general question?
This is a more general question, so perhaps you'd like me to wait.
No, please.
Okay.
Segue.
Well, partly one of the things that I hope we have a chance to have happen was the noontime presentation that was and I realized had to be canceled for other kinds of reasons. I'll say in my position as a director, I teach occasionally, and that's not my primary role, but with some of my teaching staff, I'm seeing the burnout question. A lot of, I mean, there are other elements involved, but a lot of what I see burning up folks who I work with is what seems to be a significant increase in these very issues with their students. And when you noted earlier, Jennifer, that things that we should be looking out for, drop in attendance, missing assignments. One of the things that's in my area is a first-year seminar course, and I have to say that has become, unfortunately, sort of like the norm. And faculty who feel just incredibly dispirited that with their inability to connect with students and to reach out with them through email, there's no response, they're not coming to class, they're falling further and further behind, they quit coming altogether. The mental health issues, I think, really are impinging on our faculty mental health issues and the feeling that we are making any difference for students. So I just raise that as that's, I think, a primary concern of mine, at least, is how these meld together to our overall campus health. And so I hope that noon conversation is a piece that can come back in and can be tied to these. And I think, the statistics that many of you shared at the beginning of this presentation about the level of mental health distress that we're seeing in students. I guess I'm absolutely seeing that borne out in what I'm hearing from faculty and in their classroom situations.
I am muted just to share maybe a complementary perspective from the counseling center. I'm aware of so many students, either through my own caseload or the caseload of colleagues or the PhD students who I clinically supervise, that speak to exactly what you described. So there are more and more students we're seeing who in February are saying, yeah, I haven't been to class, any of my classes in weeks. So I can only imagine how heavily that weighs for faculty when you have a roster and there's a significant proportion of the students who aren't engaged, who aren't attending. So I wanted to share that perspective from the counseling center, and I think it's a broader question that other people here can speak to as well.
I think also, in addition to that, we've been out meeting with departments, and a question that comes up for the Student Care Network a lot is, well, when do we make a referral? So with the EARS network, I would say that would be the first step, right? If a student stops coming to class. But if that intervention after a week or two, you're still not seeing the student, by all means, put a student care referral in. We created a whole new letter sometime last semester to address when we get the concern they're not coming to class, to reach out to them and say, hey, what's creating this? Let us help you. It doesn't always work, but if it works some of the time, maybe then faculty will be like, okay, some of them are coming back, So I think Jenna put it in the chat, but I think it's also, if you have questions or concerns, you can call and ask to speak to me or one of the other care case managers and just say, this is what I'm seeing. Do you have any suggestions? So we're certainly not expecting faculty, like Jennifer said, most people don't go into education thinking, I'm going to be a mental health specialist, right? So if you have questions, I know Jennifer consults with a lot of faculty. By all means, reach out so that we can come along you and support you as you work with the students on the daily basis.
Karen, your question and comments touched on well-being just a little bit, and since I promised that I would kind of bring the circle all the way around to talk about that topic, I dropped a few things in the chat just in case we run out of time here. I want to provide plenty of opportunity for some continued Q&A with our experts. As you all just saw, they really were the experts, right? And so hopefully you're feeling like you've got a few more tools in the toolbox to address student mental health in your own practice. But I want to focus a little bit on the concept of well-being at large as a big part of WSU's proactive approach to enhancing the student experience and building student success, especially in a way that's equitable. One of the things that you're going to hear a lot more about over the next, I'm just going to say, couple of years to play it really safe, is the Okanagan Charter. And this is a whole new philosophy around campus well-being that's coming out of our colleagues in British Columbia. They're about 5 to 7 years into this process, and it's just fascinating. So if you look at the UBC website and what they've built around a whole philosophy of instilling a culture of wellness and well-being into every element of campus life, they're really succeeding at it. My colleague and counterpart, Cislina Ledbetter over at Western Washington University, implemented Okanagan Charter about a year ago over there, and we're starting to see some of the early results back from that just here in our state. And there's, I think, 16 schools across the country that have implemented the charter. WSU has taken the first step, which is just signing up to become a member of the U.S. Health Promoting Campus Network. So we're kind of in that information gathering stage. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, it involves a lot of faculty involvement as well as employee involvement. And there's about 100 steps between A to B that we would have to take to achieve this, but it's one of those aspirational goals that we're going to start to weave into some of our strategic planning, and I wanted to highlight that. I dropped a Gallup link in there too, as well as a newly redesigned website that some of our folks have been working on for the global campus, but which kind of falls under my portfolio right now. And it's important, I think, just to glance at that because it highlights some of the different dimensions of wellness. You've probably seen that wellness wheel with the 8 different components that being well doesn't just mean physical health and mental health. It means financial. We talk about food security a lot, and we've made some great strides on this campus here in Pullman, with the installation of the food pantry. I visited the food pantry at the Tri-Cities campus. There's just so many things we can do individually and organizationally to build that culture of wellness and well-being for students so that they can thrive. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that just a little bit today. One of the things that I think of specifically when I'm engaging with faculty is how does your course load or the way you interact with students contribute or detract to a culture of well-being? And the example that I always like to give is, when is your default setting in Canvas for an assignment due? If it's 11:59 p.m., then most of your students who are like me are going to stay up until midnight to turn that assignment in, which contributes to sleeplessness. And we know that sleep is consistently one of the top 3 responses on the National College Health Assessment when students respond back with what their concerns are around their health. So if we can make assignments due at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m., just those little dials that you can turn and the levers that you can pull that increase wellness, the things like that you might not have thought of because it's just a default setting on your LMS. Anyways, try to identify those low-hanging fruit opportunities that you can, because sometimes the little things can have a big impact. I promised I wasn't going to capitalize the last 10 minutes of this session, so I think we still got 5-6 minutes left, and I want to definitely kick it back out to all of you all for any more Q&A that you might have, especially for our experts.
I do have one more resource I want to make sure that everyone's aware of. We have a WASAC grant, which, as Joel was talking about with food insecurity, housing insecurity is showing up far more frequently on the Student Care Network referral form. We do have some resources to rehouse students if they are experiencing a risk of eviction, of houselessness, if they've been couch surfing for a while. None of that leads to best performance in the classroom for sure. So that can be another reason to submit a student care referral, and then we will connect them. Lori Manzanares actually oversees that funding. And so if I get a referral about that, I send it straight to Lori. And yes, that is a system-wide resource grant, not just in Pullman. Lori and Eric are running point. So depending on which campus, they'll work with one of those two. But we do have funds on every campus to help if students are at risk of experiencing houselessness.
I'm really enjoying the comments in the chat and just really want to open up an invitation. If there are any questions about any aspect of what we've talked about this afternoon, I think we'd be happy to answer them. And I think that we have time for another question or two.
I just wanted to say thank you for saying out loud that you're available for phone calls from faculty who are feeling that burnout that Karen was talking about, or that concern for their own mental well-being, or the wellness that's, well-being that Joel keeps talking about, because we think we're, there for the students, and we forget that we have to fill ourselves and take care of ourselves and find resources to do that, to be good instructors. So I wanted to say thank you for saying that out loud.
That was a really lovely note to end on. It prompts me to want to speak a little bit to the EAP resources that are available to all of us as employees. One of the things I enjoy about my job is getting to talk with colleagues, and I've had colleagues share their experience working with the EAP program, and I've heard good things about the accessibility and about the quality of the services that are available. So that can be a really great resource. And I think Heather and Jenna were the first to say, hey, call us, consult with us, we're available. I'll echo it from my own mouth. I'm happy to consult. I really do my best to be available to colleagues. You're welcome to email me. I'm responsive to Teams. You're welcome to call the counseling center and ask to connect with me. I'd be happy to consult if there's a student situation that you're worried about. Oh, that's a great question from Karen. I was scanning the chat. So the related question is, when Karen was a graduate student, one of the pieces of advice was that if we encountered a student in crisis, we should consider walking the student over to CAPS. But you've heard that that's no longer encouraged. Can I clarify? Yes, I'm delighted to clarify. So on the WSU Pullman campus, for a really long time, we had walk-in hours, which was wonderful until we had that 60% increase. And then we reached a point where the waiting room would be packed. There were some really distressing situations, distressing to me, where a student was waiting for 2 hours to get in for an appointment. And that's so challenging as students have to navigate class. So we've switched to scheduling all of our initial consultations and scheduling our crisis appointments. It's not perfect. It doesn't magically create more capacity, but it at least helps students know that they do or don't have an appointment at a set time. We really work to prioritize crisis availability. And so the recommendation that I often give is, if it's a student you would have walked down to CAPS with previously, if they're receptive to calling on speakerphone, I think to schedule a crisis appointment, I think that works really well. So you'll find that our staff, we require students to schedule their own appointment because the services are voluntary, but sometimes it can go a long way if you make the call and say, hi, this is Karen, or this is Dr. Weatherman over in this department. I'm with a student right now who would really benefit from a crisis appointment. And then if the student can weigh in to say, yep, this is my name and student ID, I am available at that time, then they can help get it scheduled.
I see that folks are starting to have to peel off, and I'm so grateful that, first of all, our faculty were able to carve out time to be here. And I really want to thank all of you, Dr. Ellsworth, Dr. Case, Dr. Hyatt, and Joel. Are you a doctor? Do I get to call you doctor too? That's okay. I'll call you doctor anyway, because you have certainly got doctor level expertise here. But this was really a fabulous resource, and I really appreciate you supporting us and helping us understand what's available to us as we support our students. This was fabulous. There were some comments in the chat about disappointment over our lunchtime speaker. We will get her on as fast as we can, and we will record that session and try and make it at a time which seems to not be in prime teaching time. And then I just wanted to draw your attention. There are a few more pit stops happening this spring. And I really, what we've talked about today with mental health does relate to what we have on tap for the remainder of this semester. So in March, we've invited Dr. Jenny Hyatt to come and talk about classroom assessment that promotes inclusion. And when we think about inclusion, I know that she, in addition to others, think about designing these environments so we're really mindful of all the facets of diversity our students have and how that intersects with some of their issues with mental health. And then in April, we'll have the Center for Transformational Learning and Leadership, Joe Hewa's group, lead us through some really interesting and impactful ways of thinking about how we can support students' skills in emotional and social intelligence, which again, I think is very, very closely related to student mental health. So with that, I want to say thank you all for a wonderful day together, and I hope I see you in person on this campus or another one soon. Have a great rest of your day.